Howdy, Chess College Humanities 4. It is Monday, the 3rd of May. I'm recording this the day before on Sunday because I'm going to be on a road trip Monday up to Seattle area. So I'll be on the road, but I'll have my phone. So if you need to text me for some reason, you know how to get a hold of me, and I'll also get my email on it. And I'll have my computer with, but I won't be set up for a day or two. So anyway, have patience on that grading. I hope you guys are all doing okay. We're down to literally the last couple of weeks of school. Today I'm going to talk about documentaries, which is a great topic. Have you ever seen a documentary? How would you define a documentary? When's the last time you saw a documentary, and did you like it? Did you not like it? Documentaries have changed over the years. Mostly they've gone through kind of historically boring kind of stuff you see in high school and your educational classes to now they're very much, they almost look like a fiction film. They got cool music, they got cool dialogue. They're filmed very much like what I would call a fiction film. That's in order for you to watch them. Things have changed, just like in literature, things have changed. Fiction, nonfiction is the bestseller thing now because most people write nonfiction like fiction, if that makes sense to you at all. So today, before I go into the documentaries, I want to briefly state a few things. I'm going to post the final paper. It'll be posted. I'm going to add documentaries to the list. It's not on that list, but if you want to write about a documentary or documentary filmmaker, please do. If you know of any, if you want to write about anime, I forgot to add that on there too. I'll put that on the list in case you want to write about that. Pixar, whatever your or Japanese anime, go for it. You don't have to run the topic by me anymore because most of you aren't. And so I assume you're going to pick the topic. We're down to the last 2-3 weeks of school. You better get a topic soon. It's an important paper. It's worth, I think, 20 points. So, if you use the 20 points, do a good job. I'm going to post that so it's online. You can hand it in anytime between now and the end of school. Some people rush through these things. They want to finish. So I'm going to post it so you can submit it. Same thing with the journal. If you submit right now, you will lose a couple points because you're early. But if you submit the last 2 weeks of school, I won't take any points off for you. But you can submit it anytime you want. You upload it just like anything else that you've typed in. Hopefully you've typed it. And you upload it into how you hand in your assignments. I'll post that also so you can hand that in. I would suggest the more weeks of journal you have, the better for you. If you don't need the points, hand in a partial journal and you won't get all the points. But if you need the 10 points, it's a pretty easy 10 points because there's no right or wrong. I look at it and see if you were paying attention, if you've listened to my lectures, if you've read the chapters in the book. I know we haven't been reading much because we kind of got away from the book. That's okay, no big deal. I don't think most of you even got the book. But I will probably show the documentary to finish the course off of the story of film that's based on that book. Read the last chapter. Please do. You'll learn something. And then you'll have your final paper, which I don't want you to hand in until you're ready. Don't rush through it. That's up to you. Because you have another essay, and that's not due until, I think, Monday, right? I think I signed it on Monday. What is today? I signed it on Wednesday, I believe, so it's due next Wednesday. Make sure you get that essay about those two indie films, Spike Lee's movie and Allison Anders' movie. Critical analytical essay. Your final paper and the journal, and that is it. I haven't asked you who's all seen these lectures. You're supposed to watch the lectures. I post 2 of them a week. I could tell some of you don't watch them because I will give out information and you won't know the information because you're not listening to my lectures. Think of the lectures as something you have to do if you're showing up for class. You'd have to be in the class. You'd have to be taking notes. That's what these lectures are all about. It's the virtual lecture. If you miss a bunch of them, you're going to miss a bunch of information. That's vital. I orally and on the announcements told you what the answers I was looking for in the quiz, and a lot of you still missed the quiz by a long shot because I don't believe you listen to my lectures. I don't. I can usually tell who's paying attention and who's guessing. That's okay. It's up to you. Your grade is up to you. It's not up to me. You do the work, you'll do fine. Don't do the work, not so fine. Anyway, today I want to talk about documentaries. Now, what is a documentary? Well, it's usually defined by something that's a true story, nonfiction. Now, there's true stories in fiction too, folks. This doesn't mean all fiction movies are a lie. They could be based on a true story, and there's a lot of truth in most of our modern movies, but it's not exactly a documentary. It's scripted. It's got actors saying dialogue, but so did some documentaries. I just watched this documentary that won an Academy Award called, what's it called? The Guy Who Befriends the Octopus. Yeah, believe it or not, he's a scuba diver who goes down, befriends a octopus who becomes his buddy, and they film these incredible underwater footage. But I could tell it's been scripted because, first of all, it has other scenes with not the octopus, but with the man who's scuba diving, and you could tell they've reenacted it. They got a camera crew down there filming this guy, so it's not just. It's not just happenstance. They're there. They're lighting it. They're making it dramatic with music and narration. So a lot of manipulation goes on into documentaries, just like fiction film. And so I think that's why they become so popular now, because they're just as exciting. I mean, look at maybe you've seen some Michael Moore films. Maybe you hate those films. I think they're quite brilliant, but I'm not assigning any of those today. But he's from Roger and Me to Fahrenheit 9/11 to his newest ones, and he's the face of his documentaries. And he's a big, overweight, funny, smart guy, and he's the face of it. And so he puts himself in front of the camera and goes out there. Other documentary filmmakers won't do that. They let the camera do the talking. Two brothers I want to talk about briefly, the Maisel brothers. They're both passed away. Too bad. But the Maisel brothers had an amazing career. They sort of created this technique of documentary filmmaking that they called direct cinema, but other people have used it, like Frederick Weisman, who I want you to look at. I'll post some of the documentary, they're just previews, folks. You just have to watch the previews. But a lot of these are on YouTube for free. But the Maisel brothers did an amazing job. One of the first, they're from New York City. One did camera work, one did sound work, and they were a two-man team. And one of their biggest, I would say, thing that put them on the map, a documentary, they filmed the first time the Beatles toured United States in 1964, I believe. And it's a really seen film. They were hired to film the Beatles. And so you see all the phenomena of the early Beatles in America, folks. And so that got them on the map. People started making phone calls to them, a lot of rock musicians. And later on, they did an incredible rock music documentary called Gimme Shelter. The Rolling Stones, if you heard of them, if you haven't, Google it. The Rolling Stones hadn't been on tour in a couple of years. Their former lead guitar player, Brian Jones, is dead. They have a new lead guitar player, Mick Taylor, and they're putting out new music, but they're not sure, and they haven't toured in 5 years, and they're not sure if they have an audience anymore. Believe it or not, even the Rolling Stones didn't know they had an audience. And they weren't rich like they are now. They were going broke. And so they had to go on tour. So they mounted this huge tour of America, and it was going to culminate in a free concert based on what happened in Woodstock. Maybe you know that documentary or that phenomenon. There's been music by Woodstock and the documentary Woodstock, which is an incredible documentary. The Woodstock Music and Art Fair, 1969, in Upper State New York. It made history. People from Jimi Hendrix to Janis Joplin to Jefferson Airplane to The Who literally made history on that movie. Maybe your grandparents know what I'm talking about. You should check it out. If you want to see what hippies look like and getting along, everybody's not killing each other. They're all smoking weed and getting naked and listening to rock and roll music. Come on, it's not that bad. Anyway, the Rolling Stones wanted to do a free concert in San Francisco, like Woodstock, although Woodstock wasn't free. It became free after a while, but it wasn't started off to be free. They wanted to do a free concert, like give a thank you, and they thought they could beat Woodstock. They thought they could get as many people, and so this documentary shows how that festival came up to being. And it was called Ultimate Festival. Maybe you've heard of it. The Rolling Stones wanted to play Golden Gate Park, but they didn't have the permits for it. So they found Auto Speedway in Altamont, California, which is down by Modesto. Do you know where that is? Central California. And they decided to do it there. It was going to be free. They got other bands. They got Jefferson Airplane. They got Santana and Flying Burrito Brothers and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So they had some big, impressive bands at the time. They expected several 100,000 people, but they were not prepared, folks. They didn't have enough food, water, bathrooms, nothing. And they made a mistake of hiring as security. They hired the Hells Angels to be the security. They hired them for $500 worth of beer, folks. Now, maybe $500 went a long way in 1969, but it's not that big of a deal. And so the Hells Angels were there because the Grateful Dead were supposed to play the concert. The Grateful Dead had used the Hells Angels before, and they were friendly with the Angels, and the Angels liked them. But this was different. The Angels were a hostile, violent, just like you'd expect them to be. And guess what, folks? The Hells Angels hated hippies. They do. And they thought they were a bunch of pacifists, draft dodgers, and they didn't like them. And so during the documentary, if you ever want to watch something frightening, you see the Hells Angels beating audience members with pool cues, pool sticks, beating the holy hell out of them. And Jagger and Keith Richards stopped the concert many times to say, please quit beating on the audience. So the Hells Angels were dropping, they're all on methamphetamines, and the audience is all on this bad acid they all took. And so everybody's having a bad trip. And the security in rock concerts now is so different. The stages are huge. The audience doesn't even get near in these big venues. If you've ever been to one, maybe you have. The audience doesn't get that close to the stage anymore. But in this movie, the audience is right on the stage, and the stage is only 4 feet high. So they're leaning on the stage, and the Hells Angels are pushing them back and hitting them with pool cues. I mean, literally, you could reach and grab Mick Jagger if you wanted to. And they were trying to do that, the audience. So it was a bad situation all the way around. In the midst of this concert and all the violence that was happening, this Audience member Meredith Hunter, 19-year-old African-American from Oakland, California. He decides to get up front, and he's getting pushed around. He pushes back, and guess what, folks? He's got a handgun. He pulls out a gun, and the Hells Angels pounce on him, and they stab him to death with big knives. And in the movie, they freeze the frame so you can see it. You can see that he does have a gun. What a fool. What kind of fool brings a gun to a rock concert? Don't ask me, folks. Did he deserve to get murdered? They probably could have subdued him somehow, but they went full auto on him. The Rolling Stones didn't see it. They kept playing, and even through the guy was getting killed. And in the movie, they take the guy off in a helicopter. His girlfriend's crying. He's dead, folks. He got stabbed several times in the neck and in the back, 19 years old. It's not until later when they're editing the movie that Jagger and everybody else in the band sees the footage of the actual killing happening, that they're in shock, they're in awe, and also they're probably wondering if they're going to get sued. And so their lawyers told them to keep their mouths shut. And that was 1969, folks, December. So what are we talking, 51 years ago? And they haven't hardly said a word since. So in the way the Rolling Stones, it terrified them that they might have to be responsible for this kid's murder. Nowadays, I think there would be all sorts of lawsuits, but there wasn't then. And so the movie captures this. Now, the Maisel brothers are just hired to film the rock concert, and here this story unfolds. And they were, I hate to say it, and they'll tell you this in their interviews, they were fortunate enough to be there. So that film clip of that kid getting murdered made that film more successful than it would have been if that wasn't in there, which is a terrible commentary on what makes something popular. And the Maisel brothers knew that. They go, we're more popular for filming that murder than for anything else we ever did. It gave them a huge career in documentarians. They went on to make some brilliant, brilliant films. One of them was called Grey Gardens, which is just a work of genius. They were making films. The one brother died in the 80s of cancer. The other brother, Albert, who I think was literally a genius. He was living in New York. He's 86 years old. Finally passed away last year. Teaching documentary filmmaking, teaching this direct cinema. And what their whole theory is they're going to be there. They're going to film things, and they're not going to get in the way of the people or the story. And they're not going to give interviews. They're not going to ask questions. They're not going to have voiceover narration. They're not going to put in music. They're going to let you, the viewer, decide from the footage they've shot. And then I've edited it together. And they felt that was as truthful as they could get. They did a wonderful film in 1968 before the ultimate movie called Salesman. And it's a work of pure genius. It's as good as any fiction film out there about Bible salesmen in the southern parts of the United States. They follow these 10 guys who are selling Bibles to very, very poor people in Mississippi and Missouri, and people who cannot have, these were $150 Bibles, folks, and nobody can afford it. And so, but these guys were relentless in trying to sell them the Bibles. It's a wonderful, uncomfortable film because you watch them trying to sell these people who are so poor they can feed their kids, and they're not taking no for an answer. I mean, one of the salesmen says, I know food is important to your children, but think about your spirituality. Think about how important that is. So when you tell people not to feed their kids so that their spirituality can be fed, you're pretty much a cold-blooded salesman. And that movie is brilliant like that. And I'm going to have you guys, I'll post some of this stuff so you can go look at clips on YouTube. I'll post it all on Canvas. So that's the Maisel brothers. Another one I want to talk about is Albert Weisman, who's still alive. He's 93 years old, and he made a movie last year. He takes direct cinema to another level. He'll go into a subject, whatever it is. He had a movie called High School, a movie called College. He had a movie called Meat, about how we get our meat. If you want to go vegetarian, watch that movie. You'll never eat meat again. What he does is he comes in and he films a subject like education in college. Film everything for 6 weeks. He doesn't know what the story is going to be. He doesn't do interviews. He doesn't have an idea of how to put his ideas on the story. He's only seeing if there's going to be a story. And then he takes a year to edit that footage into a coherent story. And sometimes his movies are 3 or 4 hours long. And the brilliance is the people who are in it forget the camera's there. And it's amazing what they reveal about themselves and everything else. And the camera's right there, but they just kind of forget that it's there. Anyway, his films are beyond brilliant. And all his stuff is financed by PBS. And so he has a good contract income, because it's hard to make your living as a documentary filmmaker unless you have a contract like Ken Burns. Maybe you've seen his stuff, Baseball and Jazz, Civil War. His newest one is great. I just watched it, called Hemingway. Highly recommend you watch it if you have PBS. PBS pays for everything, though. So he doesn't have to go out and raise money. Guys like, and so Albert Maisel has did a film a couple years ago called Crazy Horse. You can go watch excerpts from it on YouTube or watch the whole thing. And it's for adults, folks. There's a lot of nudity in it. And it's, once again, fly on the wall. The camera is there recording this story, which we don't even know what it's going to be until he edits for a year. He's still out there. He's taking direct cinema to another whole other level. Now, someone who doesn't really do direct cinema but does great documentaries, he's a fiction filmmaker from Germany called Werner Herzog, and mostly his early films were all fiction, and he had a great following, international following. And then when he stopped getting enough money to make a new fiction film, he'd go off and do a documentary, which didn't cost half as much, and he could go do that. And so he's done a lot of documentaries, I don't know, 20 or 30 of them. And he always usually takes topics that have a lot of times to do with nature. I mean, one of his topics was he explored an active volcano. They actually went into the volcano. He does stuff like that. And one, he was in the Arctic Circle and he was under the water. And you can only, even with the best gear in the world, you can only stay in the water about 8 minutes without dying. That's how cold it is. And he took his camera down there and they filmed what goes on underneath the water of the Arctic Circle. And we're talking cold, cold water. And he's got this amazing, and he usually has a camera crew, but he goes down there with them. And he's no spring chicken now. He's well into his 70s, still out there, still doing stuff. He's gotten a lot of notice. One of the ones that really got a lot of notice was called Grizzly Man. Maybe you've heard of it. It came out maybe 10 years ago, about this kid who, he's not a kid. He's dead now, so he's no longer a kid. He, every year for about 12 or 14 years, he went up to Alaska, and he would go to where the grizzly bears feed. And hundreds of grizzly bears every year show up there. They feed off the salmon coming out of the rivers. And they've hibernated all year, and they're hungry. So he decides to go up there into this grizzly bear sanctuary and live with them each year for a couple months and filming them with a video camera. Well, he gets pretty well known for that. He gets so well known that he becomes a guest on some talk shows like Jay Leno, and he will show his films to high schools and colleges about the preservation his attempt to preserve the safety of these grizzly bears. Well, a lot of people who live up in Alaska said he's really taking a lot of risk. We should just leave the grizzlies alone because he's drawing attention to them by the public. By showing his films out there, people want to go up and look at him now. And so people are starting to show up. And then he was all of a sudden, is he exploiting the bears? Is he trying to protect them? Well, you have to watch the film to find out. I would say yes to both of those. And his ego got huge. He was on camera a lot. I'll show you an expert, but Canvas, you'll see it. He's out there by himself talking to the camera, how he's the protector of all bears. And the bears know that. That's why they don't harm him. They don't try to attack him. Well, folks, you know why they weren't attacking him? Because they weren't hungry. Simple as that. Grizzly bears don't want you to be your friend. They don't. They might look cuddly and like a big dog. They aren't. And he forgot that. The average grizzly bear that he was dealing with up there, when they could weigh 1,500 to 2,000 pounds, their hands could be this big, claws that big, they could tear you apart. And get this, folks, when they stand up on their back legs, they could be 7 feet tall, 8 feet tall. And he filmed all that. They didn't try to attack him because they simply weren't hungry. And also, you ever out in the woods, folks, and someone says, oh, you can outrun a bear? No way. The average grizzly bear can run 60 miles an hour. You can't run 60 miles an hour. I don't care how fast you are. You're not going to outrun a grizzly bear who wants to come after you. The other myth is run up a tree, climb a tree. Grizzly bears could climb a 50-foot tree in about 2 seconds. Can you? No. So they say the best thing to do is lay on the ground and cover your head, and because the first thing they do is attack your head. The reason why they do that, because they know that's where the vulnerability is. They know how to kill other animals, and they do it by attacking their head. And also, here's a little bit of tidbit for you. Your head is like a gourmet eating for them. All the animals they kill to eat, the head's the best. They love it. It's good, rich food. And so they say if you want to try to survive a grizzly bear attack, cover your head somehow. Good luck. So the rangers who are up there, they carry around large 45 caliber pistols, because even a 45 caliber pistol might not bring a grizzly bear down. If you shoot it enough times in the heart, it'll probably go down. But if you're running for your life, you know your shot's not that great. So anyway, Timothy was up there with no guns, no nothing. And these bears, you watch the footage, he names all the bears, he gives them names, like they're in a Disney movie. And he goes up there every year and he goes, oh, there's Bambi, there's so-and-so. And he acts like they're happy to see him. They show no emotion, folks. They just want to get on with their lives. They don't want him around. But they're letting him be there because he's not doing much to intrude. Okay, so now Timothy, that was his name, decides to take his girlfriend up there. And she doesn't want to go. She's scared of bears. So she goes, I don't think I should be there. And he goes, it's no big deal. These bears love me. They will never hurt me. They'll never hurt anybody I love. Well, he's assuming that bears could think like that. They can't, folks. That's our thought processes. We try to put our brains into animals. We do it every day. How many of you call your dogs your babies? Sorry, folks, they're not your babies. I love dogs too, but they're not our babies. They're a different species. And you got to know that to be smart. So Timothy takes his fiance up there. She's not happy. The bears, wild animals, sense fear. Literally, we put out a pheromone. They can sense it. If you're calm, you might be able to escape by. Snakes are like that. Nothing's worse to a rattlesnake is they see somebody and then all of a sudden you get stressed out, and that's why they think they're in danger. That's why they curl up and start rattling. They sense the danger and they sense your fear. Yes, that's what primal instinct is. So Timothy goes to bed that night. Here comes a bear into the his campground, and it's a bear he's not familiar with. Guess what, folks? It's a starving bear who's hungry. Well, he immediately goes for the tent and attacks the tent. Timothy, who had a camera, turns the camera on, but he did not take the lens cap off. So what you have is the audio. You don't see anything, but he's taped, but he can hear everything. And what's happening is this bear is attacking him and his girlfriend in the tent. And Timothy's trying to fight the bear off with a frying pan. Now, I don't know if you guys know anything about bears or any wild animal. If you hit them in the face with a frying pan, it's going to just make them more angry. A frying pan on a bear's head is not going to do anything. While he's beating this thing with a frying pan, he yells to his girlfriend to get out and run for her life. You hear her screaming. She runs up the hill somewhere. This bear drags Timothy out of the tent and mauls him to death. And the first thing he does, folks, he rips his head off. That's right. When they found Timothy's body, not only were a couple of his arms missing, his head was laying over there too. Well, about 50 yards up the hill, they found the girlfriend. Guess what, folks? Her head was ripped off too. Cautionary tale. Stay away from grizzlies, no matter how cuddly they look. So when the Rangers showed up, because he didn't show up, he was supposed to radio in when he needed to be helicoptered out of there. It was a very remote area of Alaska. There's no roads. You can only fly in or be helicoptered in. So when they showed up, they could see from the above, there's all these bears circling that camp. They come down, and guess what, folks? They kill every bear they see. They killed about a half a dozen bears who now had been feeding on these bodies. Then they piece the story together. That's what the Grizzly Man's about, the movie. Now, the thing he was trying to protect, which was the grizzlies, he got them all killed because his naivete. And there's a great scene at the very end. Herzog shows a close-up of a bear's face, and he freeze frames it. So you look into his eyes. He goes, when Timothy looked into their eyes, he saw somebody who had affection for him. He goes, when I look in his eyes, I see someone who's looking at me like a predator would. I'm a danger to their survival, and I'm the next meal. And he goes, and that's what I see, but that's not what Timothy saw. So it's a wonderful movie. Herzog won all sorts of awards on that one. He's done so many movies. He's out there still. He's about 76 years old right now. And he's still making these movies, still putting himself in harm's way on these incredible journeys. So documentary filmmaking is exhilarating beyond maybe fiction films because you don't know where it's going to take you. Or you're not going to have to deal with stars or writing quirky dialogue like Tarantino. It's a documentary, folks. And there's been some really famous ones. Maybe you saw Supersize This, which was the guy was kind of copying Michael Moore. Made it very entertaining. Maybe you've seen some other ones that you've enjoyed. I hope you do. Check them out. I'll put some of the stuff on Canvas. And that's it for the day. I'm going on my road trip tomorrow. I'll be out of contact, except for with my cell phone. Keep up the good work. Keep the papers coming. Some of you are doing very, very good work. Some of you have actually paid attention. Thank you. All is not lost. We still got 3 more weeks to go. Here's to it. Don't give up yet, and don't pull back yet. It ain't over yet. So, on that note, this is what I look like on a Sunday. It's not pretty. It's not pretty. I'll see you next time. The story of film continues.